Welcome to the Totally Unreal Book Club Podcast, an improvised comedy podcast where everything's made up and the books aren't real. But we'll never admit that. Are you ready? Let's do it.
This book club is totally unreal.
Yabba dabba doo. It's me and you and you and you and you. Hello, welcome.
That's pretty good, actually.
Yeah. I'm your host, Will Wood, and starting at the table today, we have to my left, Caitlin Dawkins.
On the other hand, I have different fingers.
Dahi English.
And I have different toes.
Steven Marriott.
If you eat a year's supply of Flintstone vitamins in one day, it doesn't count.
Jammers and bread.
I don't even know what's happening anymore.
A.K.A. Jalynaw Wanowski. And before we get started with this book review, let's go ahead and get started with the book review. So, Jammers, you picked the book this week.
Only just pajamas, actually.
I'm sorry, what?
Pajamas. It's like jammies, but... Never mind, carry on, Jammers.
Don't worry, Dahi, it's just the fridge screaming.
Yeah, my fridge is screaming at Dahi. Yeah, I doubt that you'll be able to hear it, but it's there. Anyway,
if you're driving on the road and you hear the sound, it's not a fridge chasing you. It's on our end.
Fair enough. Okay,
Don't
Jammers.
cry,
Crying
Dahi.
laugh.
Okay, Jammers, what's your book?
The book that I brought today, which you're all familiar with, obviously, is called Frisbees and Fridoodles.
Frisbees and Fridoodles, yeah.
Yeah, and it's by S.S. Sherbert.
Now, is it sherbet or is it sherbet?
You know what? I'm not sure because I've only read it and
Or
not
it
heard
could be, because we had Kyle A. Bear, and his is spelled like Herbert, so it could be Sherbet.
Sherbert. Sherbert.
S.S. Sherbert. That's what I'm going with.
S.S. Sherbert it is.
Maybe
maybe
he or she will be on the podcast in the future.
I
and we
would
can ask
prefer to
them.
pronounce it Sherbert.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm on board with that. In case anyone was curious.
So what is a shadoodle?
Well, that's what the book
You mean
is.
a fridoodle?
Yes,
Yeah.
I want to know.
what a doodle is. He wants to know what a shadoodle is.
What a shadoodle is
That's what I was
irrelevant.
getting at. No, because shadoodle is literally the last third of this book when they get into the shadoodles.
Yes,
Yes.
but that's irrelevant and also spoilery.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to the shadoodles later.
Hang on.
I
shadoodles
agree
and
it may
giggles.
be spoilery. I don't know that it's irrelevant.
Look, did we all read the same book here? Because I don't know if you can consider anything in a parenting manual to be a spoiler.
I thought this whole book was a big pile of shadoodle. No offense.
That's really rude.
I know, it's very real. I didn't enjoy the book. What do you want from me?
I hope Sherbert never hears this.
I don't give a shit what Sherbert thinks, okay?
A shadoodle.
I don't... What?
You don't give a shadoodle.
Oh. Right. I don't give a shadoodle what Sherbert thinks because, frankly, this manual book / Native American tall tale is something that I don't think actually makes any sense whatsoever. And this is the first time I'm saying it. I think this is our very first book that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was challenging.
Well, there was a narrative to it. I mean, like that's the whole point of the Tall Tales. Was it's supposed to be a metaphor for the lessons that you're supposed to teach your kids, right?
Yeah, but those lessons involve many questionable acts.
Well, I mean,
And there's
they're
a-
only questionable depending on the culture you come from, right?
I don't know, man. I mean, really, depending on where you go, like the axes all do the same thing in any.
Chopping.
Yeah, these axes were very questionable in their intent. They were chopping not just wood, but woodpeckers, wood chips,
Woodmen.
woodmen.
Plus, they were throwing
Woodsman.
them like frisbees, which was a little concerning. But I mean, I guess that's why
Yeah,
they
that's
used it
really
as a
more
title.
of a Norse thing. And more of like a Norse god thing.
It was also not very successful because axes don't come back when you throw them.
It's not a boomerang, right?
Yeah.
It is a
Well,
frisbee.
not-
They do
not
come
unless-
back if you throw it at the right axis.
And they also come back if you bring your 12-year-old son along with you on the journey.
Or you attach a bungee cord.
Boy.
Go get it. Come on, boy. Go get the Frisbee. That's an axe, Dad.
But we still haven't answered what a shadoodle is.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, by the end of this review, I expect everyone out there to know what a shadoodle is, what it's for, and how you can purchase one.
Using a promo code, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, that's in spoiler zone. Yeah.
Wow, spoiler for the ad break. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, we've come downhill a bit.
Don't take that from me.
We need this later.
So don't forget it, because it's important later.
No, not for the podcast.
I'll let the audience figure out what she took from me.
I confiscated something.
Other than his pride.
Sometimes I feel like his mother. So,
Speaking of mothers,
yes, there were many mothers in this story.
yeah.
94 minus 3. So 91 mothers.
We should
Well,
clarify.
started out
There
with
were-
94.
There were the 94,
they
but then there were
dropped out.
the three extreme examples of how not to be a mother, right?
Yes, they were made extremely examples of.
Yeah.
They were the ones playing fetch with
Well,
the axes.
we shouldn't get into too much of that because, again, that's pretty spoilery.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
need to. Well, does anyone have anything else non-spoilery? I kind of want to dive in.
It would be non-spoiler to say that Steve should put that spinach dip back in the fridge so my cat stops eating it.
Oh my god!
And while he's doing
Be
that,
careful while you have the fridge door open. I don't want your nipples getting too hard because you're shirtless.
Yes, you do.
Why is he always shirtless?
It's just how Steve records.
Okay.
His creative juices come from his nipples. The spice must flow, Gina.
Okay, so I'm leaving.
Bye.
Damn it, I got spinach dip everywhere.
wasn't
Is that
spinach.
spinach?
God damn it.
Why do a few people listen to this every week?
I'm
Hello,
so sorry.
listeners. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. Hello.
Okay, listen.
They are.
You have 3 seconds to say something else before spoiler warning goes up.
I want to know what a Fridoodle is.
Doodled my pants.
We find out what the Fridoodle is literally in the first sentence.
Yeah, but it's not a spoiler. So we could tell the listeners what a Fridoodle is before
Okay,
the spoiler
fine.
zone.
Well, let's read the first sentence of the book.
Gina, would you care to do the honors?
Hey, kids.
No, not the back of the book. The first sentence of the first page of the book.
Oh, sorry. We're swerving from the norm here a little bit. Okay. Well, welcome to Frisbees and Fridoodles. And in case you're wondering, Fridoodles are everything that is not a Frisbee.
Thank you. That cleared that up.
That's the first sentence.
Being a parenting manual / North American Tall Tale / everything else that it is, I feel that was an appropriate way to start. But then I also feel that is a big pile of shadoodle because that is so ambiguous that, again, this is the first book that I think just goes completely off the rails.
That's one of the reasons that I didn't enjoy this book very much. It was very vague, and they left it open, especially if they're trying to teach people things with this book.
That's the other problem. You can't close it. It just keeps popping open. And every time you walk by, oh, somebody left it open. Yeah, because the pages in the middle of the crease is actually designed so that it keeps popping open, so you keep reading it.
Spineless little bastard.
Exactly.
It's the modern version of a pop-up book. The pop-open book.
Pop open forever book.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think that we should call this thing a book. That's being a little generous.
Well, if we're going by the first sentence, it's not a book at all. It's a Fridoodle.
That
But
is
again,
true.
that is really vague. Everything but Frisbees are Fridoodles. So
All right.
you're a Fridoodle. I'm a Fridoodle.
Do we have anything else, or can we hop in?
No, I'm good. Let's do some spoilers.
All right. Fridoodle warning going up.
Warning. Incoming spoiler. Warning. Incoming spoiler.
shadoodle. I'm so excited.
Okay, so now we're firmly into Fridoodle, and everything is off the Fridoodle.
Everything is a Fridoodle,
Yes,
except Frisbees.
but let's for the sake of the listeners, let's go ahead and call them by what they also are, which is the things that they are.
Yeah.
So,
If you want to label everything, sure.
well, the one of the issues that I have with this so-called narrative is that the booklet itself does not define anything. It just calls it Fridoodle, and you have to figure it out through contextual clues.
Right, like chapter Fridoodle, where the whole chapter was just Fridoodle, 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 Fridoodle. I think it was like about 100 times. It was only like 2 pages long.
Oodles of Fridoodles.
Oodles of Fridoodles, that's
My
accurate.
favorite quote from that one is Fridoodle, Fridoodle, Frisbee, Fridoodle, Fridoodle.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
That was a great one.
Okay, that was the joke chapter, obviously, because most of it is just normal sentences, but they just replace a lot of the nouns with Fridoodle. So you're like, here, I'll read you a sentence right now. The Fridoodle, and the adjectives as well. The Fridoodle Fridoodly into the nearby Fridoodle. And while Fridoodly, he Fridoodled into the Fridoodles of Fridoodle. And you're like, okay, well, contextually, I'm pretty sure that this was the story about a man walking into a cat. But somebody else may have interpreted it differently.
I thought it was a story about a passenger train derailing and 35 people dying.
I thought it was a story of a Scottish man going into a castle that was haunted, but he had to stay overnight if he wanted to inherit it from his great-great-uncle.
There's also a good chance that, being a North American tall tale, that a Native American, but also North American, really, tall tale, that it may in fact have had like a lot of like animal spirituality and stuff involved in it. So that's why I interpreted the cat. And then for me, it became a story of this spiritual animal embodied in a cat that a man finds that leads him down a path to ultimate salvation. But that's the thing about this book is that, he asked earlier, did we all read the same book? Well, yes, but that doesn't mean that we got the same story.
That's very true.
Mentioning it that way, of course, that reminds me of the chapter where the Fridoodle was hit by the Frisbee. Now that I'm thinking of it, that probably was an eagle or something like that. So that makes a lot of sense.
See, I originally thought it was another Frisbee, but then I realized it couldn't be because it would be a Frisbee.
Yeah.
I thought this might have been one of those Frisbee axes that we'd talked about earlier, and I was like, oh, that poor bird. But then the bird flew away, so I think it was just a regular Frisbee at this point.
Well, see, that is interesting because
the Fridoodle flew away,
we
sorry.
all got the same axe out of this. So it must have been a contextual clue that led to that. Now,
Well,
some
I-
chapters are less
The axe is the
ambiguous than
Frisbee.
others.
I thought that it was an axe taped to a Frisbee for maximum damage.
Maximum damage.
Yes, that's what I
Maximum
said.
damage, yes. Oh.
Well, I think what we're going to have to do with this one, it's a little different than normal, but I think we're just going to have to go through the story as we do. And also, I'm not really sure how this is a parenting manual. I think it's a parenting manual in the sense that it's
what not
it's
to
in
do.
the form of a booklet manual,
That
and then
won't
also
close.
at the front it says for parents. But I'm starting to think that may in fact have just meant not for children.
Oh?
Yeah.
And why would
Because
you say that?
depending on how you choose to read this, it could be very steamy. But I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to go through like we normally do. We'll go through the plot outline, but we'll give you 5 different plot outlines.
Yep, that makes sense.
That sounds perfect.
Dahi, you seem disturbed by this.
No, I want to make it clear to the people listening who haven't read the book that it is just
the booklet.
that it is just the nouns that have been changed for the most part to
A couple
Fridoodle.
adjectives here and there.
Yeah, and the names of the characters in it are actually named. So that's You know, that
Yes.
stays
Well, they were part of
constant
the
throughout.
mothers
but
and experiments.
Their gender and species is ambiguous as hell.
This is true.
that you have to
also-
just figure
yeah.
out yourself.
That's
So-
why I thought it was a parody.
We're going to
manual.
give you the sort of same general outline, but then there's going to be 5 variants on it based on how we interpreted it from contextual clues. Also, let's read the back of the book. Gina started already, so let's.
But
just
you can
pass-
finish
let's
if
just
you like.
Pass it around. We'll just do one line each. We'll pass it around since the back of the book also has some interpretation. So. Obviously, it starts with "Hey Fridoodles," and obviously Gina interpreted that as "Hey kids." I'm not sure why she would do that.
so out
Because
of
the next
left
line
field.
is "leave this to the parents." So I assumed it's "Hey kids, leave this to the parents."
Well, the next line is actually "Leave this to the Fridoodles." So
Again, you're projecting.
let me just okay. I'll read it. Here's what we'll do. I'm going to read the back of the book, and then you all give me your interpretation of it. Okay? Hey Fridoodles, leave this one to the Fridoodles. Do you like Fridoodles? Then come along on this Fridoodle through the Fridoodles of Fridoodle. Along the Fridoodle path, we will encounter Fridoodles, Fridoodles, and even a few Fridoodles. In summation, Fridoodle on, my Fridoodles. Now, interpretations?
Well, I thought it said, "Hey, amateurs, leave this to the proctologists." Along,
Do you like?
do you like proctology? Well, great. Here's a rubber glove. Along this journey of
Along
Rear-
this proctologist journey.
along this proctologist journey of rear ends, we will encounter many problems and solutions and
even a
few jokes. Come along.
No, Fridoodle on, my Fridoodles.
Oh yes, that just says diddle. Diddle on, my friends.
Okay, so one of these interpretations is going to be about proctology. Dahi, what did you interpret?
Oh, me? I didn't read the back of the book.
Oh, you can. Oh, yes.
Okay, so another is going to be an existential crisis. And Steve, what did you interpret?
Let's see. Follow the book here. Hey,
back of the
possums. Do you like? Oh no, sorry. This one's Hey, possums. This one's for the.
Leave this one to the.
Leave this one to the youngsters. Do you like catching a ride on the back of a mother?
Wow, you really interpreted that for Doodle.
Yeah.
Multiple
Well,
things.
hop on and join us on this
For Doodle
marsupialistic
journey.
journey through North America with many tails all hanging off of my youngins,
Wow, you really read a lot
Yeah.
into these for Doodles.
where we shall encounter garbage, Play-Doh, and of course,
Even a few.
and even a few caterpillars.
And then for Doodle on, my for Doodles.
Awesome. Possum on, my awesome possums.
And Gina?
Well, actually, I didn't make it past the first sentence of the back, so I just said, "Hey, kids."
Leave this one to the adults.
Right, and then I was wondering where all the Frisbees went, and they
Right.
weren't there, so.
And very quickly, I got, hey, Jessica Jones, leave this one to Kilgrave. Do you like seduction? Then come along on this inappropriate journey through hell. Along the way, we'll encounter seduction, mind control, superheroes, and even a few superheroes. Netflix on, my Marvelites. I just thought that this was a retelling of Netflix's Jessica Jones. So that's what I got out of it.
The Frisbees must have really confused you then, huh?
Well, I mean, I just thought I was... Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I just thought I was under Kilgrave's control the whole time I was reading this.
I hope you put a spoiler warning there, too. I mean, sorry, a Fridoodle warning.
Well, I'll change the names and events so as not to spoil you from the series. Okay, moving on. This thing, thankfully, is only 5 chapters long, and each chapter is relatively short, as it is just a pamphlet.
The pamphlet is impossible to close.
Yes.
Possible.
Impossible.
Thank you.
So, and by the end of this, of course, we will, as promised, everyone will know what a shadoodle is and how you can buy one. Okay. All right. So let's start off. I'll kick off, I guess, with with my interpretation of the first chapter. We don't have to go verbatim here, so we'll just give like your, sort of a recap of what it was. So for me, it started out with Jessica Jones and her detective agency.
This is where they go into the cat?
I'm going to change many of the events and stuff so as not to spoil the series. So this is basically I interpreted this as my own fan
fiction type thing?
Yeah, fan fiction in the Jessica Jones universe.
Something you have a lot of experience with, I'm assuming.
Well, I've seen season 1 and the first episode of season 2.
Oh, I meant the fan fiction, but that's fine.
So Jessica Jones is hanging out in her detective agency, and in walks a stately pigeon.
Because, of course, it's a Native American tall tale.
Yeah.
Exactly, and this pigeon is her spirit guide. So the pigeon walks in and says, "Coo," which translates to, "I'm your spirit guide. Come along with me on a journey." And then she shoots the bird a smile and says, only Dahi, please. Only if you can afford my services. And since people keep breaking holes in my wall, I need to charge a little more. And the bird replies, "Coo," which translates to, "Here's some money." And then the bird shits on her floor. Sorry, shadoodles on her floor. Shadoodle does not mean shit, by the way. Anyway, so then Jessica Jones and her new pigeon companion, which I affectionately call Pidgelot, were off on a journey to defeat the ghost of Kilgrave's son's brother's dog, and along the way. On the street, as they're walking across the street, they walk into a cat. And this cat eats the pigeon. And then the cat becomes the pigeon. And then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes a flying axe frisbee, and Jessica dodges it, but not before she's sliced in half. And that was the end of the first chapter.
She didn't dodge it?
She did dodge it. She just dodged it after she was sliced in half.
I've got to ask, Kilgrave's son's brother?
Kilgrave's son's brother's dog.
So, Kilgrave's son's brother is not his son?
No.
It's a half-brother.
Same mother, different fathers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You read all of that. Oh, wow.
Grave a
Well,
guy or
that's a-
girl?
Well, that's what I got out of it.
That's an interesting interpretation.
So, Caitlin, what did you get out of the first chapter?
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I follow.
So, it opens up on Florgan Hammond, the renowned colorectal surgeon.
Colorectal?
Colorectal.
Right. But
That's another word for
yes.
proctology.
Yes, but I understand that, but I'm just curious.
There was no Coca-Cola, if that's
Okay.
where you're going with this.
All right.
Oh my god.
I mean,
I assume this is her interpretation.
That name,
Might have been
once
Pepsi.
again, was Flugenhammond.
I'll
Which
take-
is exactly the same name that I said before. And he is a doctor of colorectal surgery. So he calls out to his assistant, bring in the next patient, and the next patient walks in, and it's Coyote.
A spirit animal, of course.
No, it's Coyote. The Coyote. You
The
know,
wily variety?
no.
Oh.
Coyote, the trickster god from a lot of Native American stories. Anyway, it's Coyote.
Sounded familiar. Okay, carry on.
We're all terribly ignorant.
And he's not wearing any pants. And Dr. Flugenhammond immediately says, "Good God, man, you need some help." Because he sees he's got a terrible shadoodle problem and it needs attention right away. So Coyote lays down on his back and puts his legs up in the air, as coyotes do. And Dr. Flugenhammond gets the Frisbee axe, because that's the main
Thing that links all
equipment.
of our stories
the
together.
main piece of equipment that proctologists use, of course. That's just
That's how you interpret
That's just
it.
the brand name of his scalpel. Is a Frisbee axe. Yeah. So he uses his scalpel to remove the shadoodle from Coyote's rear end. First, he has to cut away all the hair, but he gets to it eventually.
So you interpreted a Fridoodle as a shadoodle, because
Yes.
the shadoodle doesn't get mentioned by name until the last third of the book, as we mentioned. So you
Yeah.
interpreted one of the Fridoodles as
As a
its own
shadoodle. I sort of back-interpreted it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And that was pretty much about the end of the first
Yeah,
chapter,
and,
right?
and then Coyote stands up and high-fives him and then punches him in the testicles. And that's the end of the...
Cool. Dahi, what did you interpret?
Oh, all right. So,
Because yours
so-
was an existential crisis story.
well, no, I just didn't read the back of the book.
Oh,
You interpreted that I had interpreted it completely differently.
I just thought you were having an existential crisis.
Yeah.
Because you're like, why is a book and why should I read it? What's the point of anything?
Well, no, I just didn't read the back. I wanted to read the contents of the actual pamphlet.
Okay, so what did you get out of it?
So it opens up with Cowboy Craig. He's he bursts into the saloon. He wants to get himself some of that alcohol.
Yeah.
But when he gets in there, there's no one in there, right? It's just completely empty. He looks up and
Fascinating.
down all around, and he just hears a cry coming from like the rafters up ahead. So he climbs up. He has a look, and there's a little crib just hanging there up top. You know, just like on the rafters.
And obviously a character enters at this point.
Yeah, and this is when Sheriff Shirley opens up the door, slams open the door, looking for Cowboy Craig, and when he slams open the door, down comes the
carriage, baby, and all.
yeah, that's exactly it. And at this point, he eyes Cowboy Craig up in the rafters, and then whips out his Frisbee axe, throws it up at Cowboy Craig, and well, it's like a cliffhanger at the end of that section, from what I
Because he's
interpreted.
hanging off of a cliff by the end of the chapter, or are you just being figurative?
Well, that's where the saloon is. It's on the edge of a cliff.
I thought the saloon was the cliffhanger saloon. You were telling me about this
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was named the Cliffhanger Saloon because
Yeah.
it was on the edge of a cliff.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yes.
I missed
So
that bit.
you didn't interpret any spirit guide in the first chapter.
Oh, I didn't tell you what was in the crib, did I?
Oh, what was in the crib?
It was a baby wolf.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So wolf cub.
Yeah.
Cub. Yeah.
Sweet.
Steve, yours was a story of...
Possums and caterpillars
that's
and Play-Doh.
right, yeah.
Yeah. So
Now, can you confirm now, Plato like the substance or Plato like the poet?
Yes.
you mean the Greek philosopher?
Yes.
Yeah, or
he
poet,
does mean
whatever.
that.
No, the substance. As you will sure quickly find out. I opened the book and started reading, and it starts with 6 young possums all playing in a little castle that they've built out of Play-Doh. And they're hanging out in the castle being like, wow, this is quite a great little place, and I would love to go on an adventure, but why would we need to? Because this castle is great, and it's got everything we want. You want a bar? We can build a bar. You want a ladder? I can build a ladder, but I wouldn't recommend climbing it. And all of a sudden, the ground that they built this castle on starts to move. And they look down, and they're going, Mom, where are we going? And her mom was like, I am taking you on a quest. This is how I interpreted her voice, to be much more deep and masculine than it should be, but whatever. And it turns out that their mother was their spirit animal. And so they start going, well, they didn't have to do anything. They just sat there, kept playing in their Play-Doh castle, and the mother started trotting along. But the mother had her own spirit animal. And this is when she looks down at the ground, and she is standing on the back of a much, much larger caterpillar. And this caterpillar was very large and very hungry, but very slow. And the caterpillar goes, I am your spirit animal. And then the caterpillar picks up not one, not two, but 12 Frisbee axes and throws them all at once into the wall, and they just stick into the wall. And all the possum kids are like, whoa, that's fucking cool. And that's where it ended.
A whole passel of possums, eh?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the collective noun for possums.
Passel?
Passel.
Oh, sweet.
So
Passel
Gina,
of possums.
you interpreted this story, you said, as
Much more innocent.
as a story of kids and parents.
Yes.
And go ahead and give your interpretation of the first chapter.
All right. Well, obviously, after that first sentence, I realized that everything had to be everything except Frisbees. So I was like, my basic interpretation was, of course, that they were going to be on a picnic. And they were planning out this beautiful, beautiful picnic. And then they went to McDonald's and they picked up 100 hamburgers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what you do at picnics, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Every
for
picnic
sure.
I've
This
been
is
to.
like A
Steamed
plus
hams.
A+ parenting. So they're at this picnic and they realize that they don't have a picnic like blanket. So they just unwrapped all the hamburgers and used the wrappers as the picnic blanket, right?
Because leave this one to the parents.
Exactly. I'm glad you're picking up on this. Okay.
I'm excited to hear when the Frisbee axes show up.
And so they're sitting there and they're talking and they're eating their hamburgers. And then all of a sudden this old woman comes up to them and is like, would you like to know what your spirit animal is? And they were like, oh, yes. And she's like, you must pass a test for the spirit animal to choose you. And I said, not me, obviously. Although this is like me self-inserting myself into the story. You know, it's just so good.
Projecting, yeah, we all project. I just finished watching Jessica Jones.
Yes,
And
thank
I don't
you.
want to tell you why I went to colorectal surgery. That's personal.
So they obviously they were very interested in this because this woman looked very mystical and cool. And so she says, here, take this Frisbee axe. I'm so sorry.
It all comes back to colorectal again.
It's on my mind now. Can't cleanse it. And throw it at the tree, and whatever emerges, you shall see. It rhymes because, of course, that's what mystical people
Does the
do.
old
That's
woman
what old
speak
people do.
entirely in rhymes?
Old people speak in rhymes.
That's accurate, yes.
This is a fact.
So we'll remember this. So that was the end of your first chapter, right?
Well, yeah, it ends with them about to throw it.
Now back to my story. We're going to do chapter 2 and 3 because chapter 2 and 3 are both fairly short chapters, so we'll just combine them together as we go through. So, Jessica Jones is now... What?
Carry on.
Jessica Jones picks herself up twice and and using the spiritual essence of the now cat reforms into herself, and but the cat is now part of her. So it's kind of like those old cartoons or whatever when they have like the little kid going to the beach and they have like the duck inflatable tube around their waist. That's kind of how she's held together, but with a cat.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But she decides to chase after the direction of the Frisbee axe because she has no other leads and also no case. So, she's after Kilgrave's Kilgrave's son's brother's dog, but she doesn't have a case. Like nobody came in and
She doesn't even have a backpack?
she uses, well, now she has a fanny pack.
No.
It's the cat. So, anyway.
Don't bring fannies into this. That's my story.
So she's running down the street.
That's a whole different thing to me.
It's a whole different hole.
So she's running down the street, and who should she run into but Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil. And so Daredevil can't see her because he's blind.
But
Spoilers.
He can.
It's not a spoiler, really. Everybody knows Daredevil is blind.
I didn't.
Well,
I didn't know that either.
Really?
well, just open a book, not this one, but
Literally any other
that's
book.
how you interpret it.
you can't close this one. So anyway, runs past Matt Murdock / Daredevil, and he doesn't see her, and then she runs into a parked vehicle and steals it, and because she needs a ride to get faster to where she's going after the direction of the Frisbee axe. So she takes the car and she's driving down, and she eventually catches up with the Frisbee axe, and it's just going like really fast, right? And so she follows it for 18 miles and out into some old haunted woods while she assumes they're haunted because they're old. Anyway, and finally the axe gets caught by the person who threw it, and it's Thor. And Thor is standing there because,
of course,
as it turns out, he lost Mjolnir, and he also lost that other weapon he had, so he had to fashion himself a Frisbee axe, and he did that using the dead star of whatever that planet was from the second or the third Avengers movie. Spoilers. But the one where where large Peter Dinklage shows up. Spoilers. So anyway, but not non-specific spoilers. So he forges himself this Frisbee axe, and then it turns out that Thor is after Loki again. So they decide to team up because they'd heard tell that that Loki had gotten a new puppy.
Was Loki a horse at this point?
No, he was.
Because a Norse is a horse, of course.
Shut up.
And Loki's often a horse in mythology.
Is he a horse, or does he just
Of course, of course.
he
have
takes the
relations with horses?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is my
This is an
interpretation.
Equus.
Oh,
and
sorry.
in my interpretation, he's just Christopher Eccleston. That's right. He's
Why?
He's played by Christopher Eccleston because he regenerated for the 9th time, clearly.
Oh my gosh.
And then the Doctor Who stuff came in to my interpretation. But that's for chapter 4.
Okay.
Jesus.
Caitlin, you're chapter 2 and 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I am. So, Coyote was so grateful at having the shadoodle removed that he took Dr. Flugenhamen for a road trip on
That's where
his
he got in the car.
motorcycle.
That's where he got in the vehicle.
Yeah, on his motorcycle, which was painted like a flaming unicorn. And Coyote and Dr. Flugenhamen go on an epic road trip on the motorcycle across into the desert. And then Coyote stops in the middle of the desert and pulls Dr. Flugenhamen off the motorcycle and throws him on the ground, and then just throws berries at him until he eats them. And it turns out the berries are...
I'm sick of you throwing these berries. I will dispose of them.
Exactly. Exactly. And it turns out the berries are psychedelic, and they're not berries at all. They're mushrooms. So Dr. Flugenhamen trips real hard, and he has
fall?
he falls straight into a mushroom hole. And he has a conversation with the sky about how the sky abandoned him as a child and how he's never felt safe again in the arms of another man. So he had to adopt a dog. So then the drugs wear off and he realizes he's not wearing any pants. and Coyote is gone, but in his place is a beautiful naked woman named Astrid. And that's where it ends.
Wow. Dahi.
Oh, okay. So we pick back up at the cliffhanger saloon on the hanging off of a cliff, and the cliffhanger that happens there with the
At the cliffhanger.
yes, on hanging off the cliff.
Yes.
With the
wolf cub.
yeah the axe frisbee gets thrown at Cowboy Craig, and for the second chapter, the second section, he actually catches it himself. So Cowboy Craig is fine. I was worried at that cliffhanger.
I wasn't.
Well,
Because I didn't read it the way you did.
this is true.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And so he throws it at Sheriff Shirley and slices Sheriff Shirley open, and he ends up basically freeing the town from this tyrant. And then he goes to the crib that had fallen to see if the wolf cub is okay. But no, the wolf cub had died. And he wanted to be one with this wolf cub, so he just eats its corpse. Just consumes it and becomes one with the wolf cub. And then at that point, the townspeople are all celebrating. They're all like, yeah, you did it. Congratulations, whatever. And he decides to go out on a journey to find himself now that he's seen such horrors.
A relatively short journey, but yeah.
Yeah. And so he heads out into the desert and then, realized that he forgot to bring water with him. And
So chapter 3 also ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And
But
it's
a figurative one.
it's interesting that you and I both interpreted desert there.
Well, I mean,
And we all interpreted a dog or wolf.
yeah. I
Well,
mean, I
Coyote.
Mine was a coyote.
The context just sort of suggested that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's
No,
what
but
I
you
got.
actually said that you brought an actual physical dog into it at the end there. You said he got a pet dog.
Oh, he was tripping though.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Steve, go ahead with the continuation of your thrilling Fridoodle.
Well, this is so the caterpillar walks straight up towards the wall with all the possums clinging to his back, and just leaves all the frisbee axes sitting in the wall and walks right up, just right between them, straight up the wall. And they look, and it's a very, very large wall. And they just climb and they climb and they climb. And all the possum youngins are just sitting there going, this is quite a ways, we gotta go. And they just kind of kept waiting. Finally, they get to the top, and they're not just on a wall, but they're at the top and the edge of a dam. And they look, and there's just water everywhere on the other side, as is often the case when you get to the top of a dam. And near that water,
If it's doing its job.
if
yeah.
it's doing its job. However, the water is slowly, they're very minutely, but they're very aware little critters. And they notice the water's just ever so slightly dropping. They look down, and where all those frisbee axes had hit the wall, it was just trickling water out. They'd punctured a hole in the dam.
Oh, dang.
Oh, dang indeed. And so they see a rowboat off to the side.
Oh, dang.
Oh, dang indeed.
Was that a robot or a rowboat?
A rowboat.
Okay, just making sure.
No, thank you for clarifying.
I mean, we've had robots and boats be the same thing before.
Yeah.
And so they run over to the rowboat. Well, the caterpillar does. Everyone else is just along for the ride. And he says, we need to get in here quickly. Otherwise, we're going to be sucked out the hole from the dam.
Oh, dang.
Oh, dang. And so they hop in the boat, and they realize we don't have any paddles.
Oh, dang!
And the young possums are like, what are we going to do? Wait, we've got Play-Doh. And so they quickly fashion Play-Doh paddles, and they hand them to the caterpillar, and he goes, you only gave me 2? Come on, give me another 10. So they make much smaller paddles, but they give him 12 total. And he takes all these paddles and he starts to row, but that's when you hear this giant explosion of explosion being a, relative word, I guess. A lot of water gushing out at once from down below the dam wall.
Oh, dang.
Oh, dang.
Through the damn wall. And they quickly start rowing as fast as they can across the water. And you know where they go?
Do we find out next chapter?
No, you found out right now.
Ooh.
They get to the other side of the water, and that's where they find a little desert. That's
Oh,
right, there's a
dang.
desert in this one, too.
Oh, dang.
And you know what's waiting at the
dang.
edge of the desert?
We'll find out next chapter?
A dog.
Oh, dang!
I know. That was the end of that chapter.
Well, so we've left off on the axe frisbee, the frisbee axe,
Getting thrown at the tree.
getting thrown
Let's
at the
just call
tree.
it a frax from now on.
The frax. All right, that works. A frax. Seems a bit weird,
Because
but
it
that's
takes a
fine.
fraction of the time to say it.
It would have, but all this time we've taken explaining it has actually taken longer than it would have taken to just say Frisbee axe again
Frax
for the
you.
rest
Oh,
of the
frax.
Well, frax. Okay. so we throw the frisbee axe, the frax. I'm so sorry. I cannot be taught. At the tree.
You old
You're a
dog.
rebel without a cause.
There's a dog in this one, too.
And they have really good aim, I guess, because it's embedded in the tree. And they're like, nothing happened with the tree. And then all of a sudden, the kids just like, there's a snake in my boot.
I thought Cowboy Craig was going to say that.
And
Maybe he does.
Is that because one of them was watching Toy Story on their iPad?
Could be.
And the old
Plus he was a
mystical
cowboy.
woman, the old mystical woman said, "Ah, yes, the snake has chosen thee, just like how you threw the axe at the tree."
Right, because she rhymes, yeah.
And I assume that means because it's
Old
the
people
tree
rhyme.
that was chosen to be thrown at. I don't know. So we assumed that it was the snake that was the animal. And the other kid's like, well, what's mine? And they're like, well, I don't have another frisbee axe to throw. So you're just going to have to... I don't have another frax to throw. So you're just going to have to sleep on it. And then she wisps away and into like this weird sand castle thing. And they're like, whoa. And then that's where that chapter ends, unfortunately.
All right. Well, before we head into the last 2/3 of each of our interpretations, let's take a short ad break. I guess we'll do 5 of them. This portion of the podcast is brought to you by. Oh, dang. Oh, dang.
This portion of the podcast is also brought to you by annual colorectal exams. Real important. Get up in there.
This episode is also brought to you by the Cliffhanger Saloon. Just come along here and who knows what you'll get.
This episode is also brought to you by Estranged Family Reunions. Just ask your son's brother about it.
Frax.
What, this episode is brought to you by Frax?
French accents?
Frax.
Okay.
We.
This episode is
Oui.
also brought to you by Season 1 of Jessica Jones, available now on Netflix. $9.99 a month, and you can watch that as well as hundreds of other titles. And Netflix, if you're listening, I expect my check soon.
It's also brought to you by mushrooms and the power that they have on spiritual journeys. Take some and see where you go.
Go.
This episode is also brought to you by Wolf's Cradle. It's the thing that you get if you want a wolf cub.
This episode is also brought to you by Possum Car Seats. You can fit as many as you want on your back, so long as they're safely attached.
And
Oh,
this,
dang.
and this episode is also brought to you by listening to old ladies who rhyme. An association.
It's something we do all the time. In association. And finally, this podcast is brought to you by www.fracklesandShackles/Frisbees and Fridoodles/shadoodle.yo. And if you go to that website and enter in promo code TUBCpodcast, it will send you 1 free shadoodle and your choice of 17 different Fridoodles, all within 1 large Fridoodle. So back to the one singular story interpreted 5 different ways. So the last 2 chapters we'll do again, just sort of rapid fire and get to the end of it here, because these were the shortest of all the chapters, but also where the shadoodle comes up.
Yep.
And where we will, by the end of this, tell you all what a shadoodle is definitively and where to buy one. So
Well, we've already told them where to buy one.
Well, we told them where to get one for free. We didn't tell them where they can buy one.
Okay.
So, anyway. Okay, so Jessica Jones and Thor are in the forest, and they're looking for Christopher Eccleston Loki, also known as the Doctor.
Who?
Exactly. And so they head off into the desert because that was the last known sighting of Dr. Loki. And they hop into the car and they drive all the way out to the desert while making sure along the way to stop at gas stations, snack shops, and even a few more gas stations to make sure that they had everything they needed for their journey, for their Jessica Jones-inspired journey. So off they go, and then they get to the desert, and as soon as they reach the central area of the desert, which was marked on the map as such, and also said Loki is here, they found not one, not two, not even three, but exactly 0 Lokis, because he'd already moved. Slightly to the left, and then they turned their head, and there he was. The map was outdated.
By a few seconds, because he had just moved.
So they took the time to update the map.
Yeah. By a few seconds.
For some reason.
For the next one.
The next
From your
time.
interpretation.
Well, I mean, they had to.
I don't see what else they possibly could have been doing.
I assume they had to update the map again immediately after when they took Loki away, right?
Well, after they stopped using the map, it was no longer their concern.
Oh my god.
So they find Dr. Loki, and they handcuff him with a couple of spare fraxes.
What's a frax
Sounds
again?
dangerous.
It's a frisbee. You son of a frax. Okay. So they cuff him with their fraxes, and they take him into custody by putting him in the back seat of the car. And they're about to drive back to Jessica Jones's shop / house / detective agency, when all of a sudden the cat detaches from her body and she falls apart. And the cat flies off into the air and is never seen again. And that's the end of chapter 4, and then chapter 5 quickly glues it all together, but not Jessica, but the story all together, where we find out that Jessica is dead, and she was the shadoodle all along.
So the shadoodle was...
Is a corpse, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Wonderful.
I bet no one saw that coming, including me. But I interpreted it that way just now. Caitlin, let's go.
Yeah, so we continue on with Dr. Flugenhamen and Astrid, the naked woman who appeared in the place of Coyote. So she says to him, "We must walk," and turns around and just starts walking. And of course, being a colorectal doctor, Flugenhamen is very distracted by her rear aspect. And he follows her, stumbling along, because he's still recovering from all the mushrooms that he had. And they go further into the desert, and they've happened into an oasis, and Flugenhamen is staring around at him, and he's crying at the beauty of this oasis. And he's just openly weeping, and Astrid turns around and starts licking his face, and he's like, he just doesn't know what to do with this, because this beautiful naked woman with a very nice rear aspect is licking his face. And then she starts whining a little bit, and then she turns into Coyote, and Flugenhamen is completely overwhelmed. And Coyote hugs him, and he just starts crying more, because suddenly, all of a sudden, he feels safe in the embrace of another man, which is what the sky took away from him when he was a young boy. So he feels healed. So he continues on into the oasis. He finds a little house, He knocks on the door, and who answers the door but his mother? And he moves in with his mother, and she makes him a lovely stew, a rabbit stew, and he eats it, and it turns out it's mushrooms. So he starts tripping again. His mother turns into Astrid. She starts licking his face. He runs out the door, and there's a mountain. The oasis has turned into a mountain. So he climbs up the top of the mountain, and a giant eagle comes and picks him up and carries him off, and then drops him into a volcano. And turns out the shadoodle is the One Ring. So he takes the ring, drops it in the volcano. Eagle picks him back up. He flies home, and the next morning he has a 9 a.m. appointment for the colorectal exam.
Kinky.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So, okay. Gotcha. Shadoodle is the One Ring. All right.
To rule them all.
Okay, so I guess I'll continue on with
I guess you will.
Cowboy Craig. He's stuck in the desert. He forgot to bring water with him, right? So now he's on the search for water, and he did, like, obviously he's in the middle of the desert. There's no water anywhere. It's all just dry and hot and just miserable. But he sees off in the distance, like a ghostly wolf cub. It's his spirit animal, and he just decides to follow it. And as he follows it, he gets more and more thirsty. Just like his throat is like sandpaper, and it's just awful. But he follows the mirage wolf cub to the edge of the desert, and there he sees a dam. And he's like, oh my God.
Oh, damn.
I can get some water. But he's so parched and so tired that he doesn't know if he can get to the dam in time. So he whips out his Frisbee axes and just throws them at the dam so that the water can flow to him. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work out that way. It's mainly just mud that flows through it. And as the mud flows through, he just decides that that's it. That's the end. And he just writes his name to memorialize himself in the sand. And the signature that he writes is Shadoodle, which is truly what his family name was. And that's what the Shadoodle is. It's his family name.
Okay.
Wow.
Cowboy Craig Shadoodle.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Steve.
All right, so if you
damn.
So the
Dang.
family of
Oh, dang.
possums
Oh, dang.
is on the
Sorry,
back
right.
of the caterpillar in the rowboat, just made it to the desert island where they see the dog.
Oh, dang.
Oh, dang.
And the dog goes, welcome, this is my desert island. I'm your spirit animal. And the caterpillar goes, oh, dang! Because he thought he was the, like, top of the food chain spirit animal. So they hop onto this dog. And,
Weird that a caterpillar thought that.
yeah, a little bit.
Caterpillar's not the top of any food chain.
No, a spirit animal chain. Doesn't matter.
Anyway.
So they all hop off the rowboat, and the paddles are just sopping wet and falling apart, and the children are inconsolable, just crying their faces off. So they crawl onto the back of this dog, who starts walking into the center of the desert island, and he's like, I've been here for quite a long time, and I've waited many hours for people such as yourself, who are not actually people, yet other spirit animals. Lesser spirit animals, might I add. And the caterpillar gets a little, like, chuffed at that, and he's like, whatever. And I've waited many hours here, and I'm glad you're finally here. This is what life is all about. This, right here, is the spirit animal haven. I have built my life on this simple desert island with nothing to suffice me, but... whatever, you know what I mean. Except for sand. And if you dig down a little bit, it's like this hard exterior. And all of a
That
sudden...
knocking was on our end.
Yeah.
There's nobody outside of your car trying to get in right now.
So he digs down a little bit and shows them and knocks on the hard surface. Yes. And all of a sudden,
Oh,
the whole
dang.
desert island starts to shake, and the dog freaks out. He's looking around. He's like, what is happening?
Oh, dang.
And from the water that is slowly descending, this giant turtle head pops out and turns around, and he's like, young dog. I realize all my spirit animals have the same voice. Young dog, I am your spirit animal. And the dog goes, if you be so kind.
Oh, dang.
Oh, dang!
And the turtle says to him, I have been here since the dawn of time. There is none more spirited than I. Give me an O dang.
Oh, dang.
Oh, dang!
Give me an O.
Oh,
Give me a dang.
dang.
What's that spell?
Oh, dang.
I mean, oh, dang.
He was the most spirited animal of all, you see. Except for the pepper alligator, but that's a different story. So anyways, they're all on the back of this turtle just marveling at all the spirit that's going around. And the turtle says, I'm sure you're wondering why I've brought you to this desert island, which is my back. And they're all like, yeah, it's pretty safe. And he says, well, come with me. And as if they had any choice. And he kind of paddles like 20 feet forward and they come to a gift shop. And so he's like, go inside, please. And so they all go inside. And of course, there's photos from their time on Spirit Animal Island. And all of them looking quite shocked in their rowboat. And of course, that's where you could also buy a glow-in-the-dark shadoodle. And the shadoodles wrap around your wrist, and they are in fact bracelets.
Slap bracelets?
Slap bracelets, you bet.
All right. Well, so the other child has been told to sleep on it, and she's like, well, okay, I guess I'll do that. So she's all ready. She's in bed, and she looks down at her little pet dog, and she's like, oh, are you going to sleep with me tonight? And the dog's just like, doesn't answer because it's a dog. And then, so she sleeps, and then she wakes up in the morning, except she's not in her own body. She's in her dog's body. And she's like,
Oh, dang.
and she's like, oh, dang. And so she's walking around and she realizes just how terrible they are for not feeding her, the McDonald's, hamburgers from yesterday. So she goes with her dog into the pantry, but then her mother starts yelling at her, but her mother doesn't realize that she's the dog. So she's trying to say, but I'm a human. I can eat hamburgers. It doesn't really work out very well for her. But so then she's like, well, what happens if I go and wake myself up? Except that just turns out that it's a terrible decision because she goes to try to wake herself up and then she wakes up in her own body and now her dog is just jumping on top of her. So she's like, whoa, I think this means something. And then all of a sudden, as creepy as it sounds, the old woman just appears in a pile of sand once again beside her bed. And she's like, you have been chosen by the dog. My dog.
Nice rhyme.
And she's like, wow, this is so meaningful to me. Wow, thank you so much. Oh, dang.
Oh, dang.
Just kidding. Little kids don't say that.
They would never say something so foul.
Much worse.
And she's like, okay, well, have fun in the sun, my dear. Don't fear. And then she spirits away into the thin air, and then that's when it hits the little girl. She says, oh, the old lady was the shadoodle.
Oh, dang.
Shadang.
So, there you have it, listeners. A shadoodle is anything that's not a frisbee or a fridoodle. And you can buy one anywhere that sells them.
In every store where available. For a limited time only.
And I would also like to note that if anybody was offended in any way, shape, or form that this didn't sound like a traditional North American tall tale, well, the pamphlet probably should have given some more definition.
Well, it wasn't a great parenting manual either.
No, it really... It
was much less mothers than I originally
Yeah.
expected.
Nowhere near 94.
Well, there's as many as you want to interpret.
Oh, well, you could just chalk that up to, thank you all for listening to the Totally Unreal Book Club podcast, our weekly review podcast in association with the Voices of Anarchy, of which everyone here is also a member. You can check us out at www.voicesofanarchy.com or on Twitter at voicesanarchy. You can find the podcast on podcast services around the globe, and you can support the podcast on patreon.com/tubcpodcast. That's TUBC podcast. On Twitter and Instagram at tubcpodcast. That motorcycle is on our end, not yours. And you can literally just find us everywhere else at TUBC Podcast. Please please remember to 5-star rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us out. And you can also support us, like I said, on Patreon for just $1 a month. And it would really help us keep the mics on and doing what we do. I want to thank you all once again in the panel this week. And you can follow each of us on our personal Twitters at
CaitlinRoar.
H&F official.
Steve Marriott.
JALYN. JAL.
Jammers and Toast.
JALYNAW at twitter.com.
Is that your email?
I don't think that's how Twitter works.
I forgot how to spell my own name.
Wow.
Wow, you're really gonna mess with the outro theme this week. Anyway, thank you all once again. We'll see you next week.
Oh, dang.
I'm gonna frax your shadoodle.